welcome to the DD podcast. This is where we speak to female experts about all things relevant to working women in India. Think about fitness, health, career, relationships, everything. In this episode, Anshika and I sit down with Radhika Mohta, a matchmaker and relationship coach who works with marriage minded singles to help them find their partner. She also talks about this super interesting community that she's put together for all singles, especially in Bangalore. So, if you want to know more about that and generally get to be a part of this conversation, let's dive in.
I have a question I've been jumping about. My first question to you is Radhika. Before we even get into the podcast, is what exactly is a situationship?
Ooh, asking for a friend.
Am I?
Okay, so let's just say that situationship is this cool word, the buzzword, to cover up for commitment phobia, for avoidant or anxious attachment style in dating, for just covering up your dating blind spot and keeping it cool and keeping it light and calling it a situationship.
That was the most articulate definition of situationship I've seen on the internet, but I love it.
I have a follow up. How do I say this in a group of 20-year-olds without being dismissed? Because, one, I have an articulation that I can use in credit now, but nobody listens. Like, I'll leave this as a rhetoric question if we don't want to get into that, but I think that's my problem for sure.
No, we absolutely want to get into each and every question. So, like, no filters, no edits required.
Yeah.
In a group of 20-year-olds, if we have to talk about situationships, I think I'm going to say two things. One, please understand your attachment style, your personality, your love language. Just gain more clarity and more self awareness on who you are. And that will allow you to understand why you're behaving how you're behaving. And after that layer of self awareness, please know that there's nothing like, oh, we are keeping it casual, we're keeping it light, just be cool about it. And nobody catches feelings. One of you is always catching feelings. It's just that that person then decides to not express it because you will not be receptive of it.
Thank you.
Like a mic drop moment.
I know. No, thank you so much. AK, this was a surprise to me too. I love this. I think this will be our intro now. We're not doing like a separate intro. But thank you, Radhika. Thank you for being here this evening. This is our first evening podcast, by the way. We're testing out which slots work better for people and for us.
Yay. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So Radhika, at DD, right? I mean, quick, I know Anshika's like, we've spoken to you off the record about what we do, but if I were to tell the world why we're sitting down here with you today, at DD, we talk to working women in India today and, not just say one aspect of their life, but everything. Think of health and wellness, fitness, career, money, and obviously relationships, right? So all the questions we ask you today is in the hope of speaking to that working woman in India today, either resonating with her, either telling her something that she hoped to hear from a friend, from a sister, but didn't get to, or just something she says for later and comes back to, right? And before we get into questions, so like I was saying, as we, before we get into questions per se, would you be able to tell us a little bit about your life, your work, and whatever we've done our homework, we know that you've worked in like digital media, marketing, you've been a journalist, and how did you land upon solving for like urban loneliness today, like when it comes to relationships and matchmaking? So yeah, that's what we'll start with.
Awesome. So, this is my brag about yourself section. And where do we begin? So, I grew up in Indore, Madhya Pradesh, and spent about the first 2 decades of my life there in the city of poha jalebi, and now also the cleanest city in India for the seventh consecutive year. Super proud. And then studied in Pune, went to media and communications college, Symbiosis, worked in Mumbai across journalism, advertising, social media, when social media wasn't this bigger thing. So we were still like, oh, how do you get Facebook likes? Back in the days when Facebook likes mattered so much. And the transition to the land of the ecosystem of startups happened about a decade ago, and last 5 years particularly have been in the space of dating, relationships, love, solving for urban loneliness, improving social health, all of it. And i'm I'm just so grateful that I get to work on what I do. And yeah, um, this is where we are.
A follow up, Radhika, is Elevate the shape that this mission has taken? You want to tell us a little bit about that also?
Oh, sure. So, Elevate is a dating accelerator for marriage minded singles. And people are typically in their 20s, 30s, and 40s when they join Elevate on the path to find their life partner. So it's not a matchmaking program, but it's definitely a program that enables people with more clarity, with an understanding of how to meet people on apps, off apps, have more meaningful and better conversations, and just address their dating blind spots, break those patterns that aren't serving them anymore, and they go on to make progress. Typically, in the next 3 to 6 months' time, we've seen people find their life partner.
Got it. Now that you mentioned about, say, clarity, I want to ask you, Radhika, if there was like three pieces of advice that you would give somebody who's struggling with confidence and putting themselves out in the dating scene, what
Mhm.
would you?
Interesting. So, three pieces of advice to boost your dating confidence. I think it's less to do with dating, more to do with confidence in general. A lot of things we tend to label it and package it in a way that the moment you add the word dating, people are all ears and they are willing to listen to you. uh, but a lot of it just comes down to very, very simple, basic adulting lessons in life. So, three things. One, is regardless of whether you are currently experiencing a remote work situation or a hybrid situation or whatever it is, please know that a normal human being, a social being, needs 6 positive social interactions a day. So if all your interactions are happening in a remote work, asynchronous chat form where you only get to see email signatures and Outlook pictures, and the only person you're talking to entire day is your Swiggy and Zomato wale bhaiya, and perhaps your cat or your dog, then you need a little more. So 6 positive social interactions a day could include asking your barista for your favorite coffee at the coffee shop, asking your liftman on how is their day going, just catching up, saying a hi to the coconut water bhaiya or whatever it is, but like you need those. Second is to just be off your screens when you're out and about in public. I mean, I understand when we have a sense of urgency, there's an emergency, we have to be on our phones, we have to use our AirPods and all of that, but not always. Because if we are always going to be on our screens, we miss out on all those opportunities to be able to engage with people in the real world, right? And then we tend to sign up for those events which are like, oh, come, we will help you have human connection. I mean, sure, but throughout the day, you had infinite opportunities to have human connection. So just be off your screen. It's okay to smile, compliment, say a hi, greet people. This is normal. We are social beings. It has got nothing to do with I'm an introvert, I'm an ambivert, I identify as extrovert or not. It's just to do with I'm a social being. This is how you show up being social. And the third part to boosting your self confidence would be to remember that everybody loves to feel seen, heard, valued, and understood. So, at any point in time, when we place ourselves in a situation and think, oh, अगर मैं जाके उसे हाय बोलूंगी तो मेरी वैल्यू कम हो जाएगी, मेरी इज्जत कम हो जाएगी, और उसके साथ साथ सामने वाले को लगेगा क्या क्रिंज है, ऐसे कोई हाय बोलता है क्या. बट अगर हम उस कॉन्फिडेंस के साथ जाएंगे कि यार मेरे किसी को हाय बोलने से उसका मूड लिफ्ट हो सकता है, एंड नॉट जस्ट अ हाय बट ऑल्सो अ फॉलो अप, a general remark on the overall environment, a compliment, a sincere compliment, something, it really helps lift everybody's mood. So it's so important to just engage with the real world, show up as your authentic self, and be human.
You know, both Chani and I think we have entered the professional world as Zoomers. We have seen async work, we have seen remote work all our lives. And now that we talk about it, I think the best part of my day is actually going out and seeing the world and talking to people and saying hi. And now Chani's also moved to Mumbai, so I get to see her more often. And just the mere presence of having a somebody to work with is just amazing. It's insane. Like the value it adds to your life,
Yeah.
it does wonders to you.
Yeah, same thing that I was thinking about. So, right after I graduated for a year and a half, I was in Bangalore, but really far from the city for whatever reason.
Right.
And my whole life was remote. Like the friends I left when I moved to Bangalore, the people I worked with, Anshika, and all my colleagues, the world at large, my entire life was remote. And they only say, so I didn't talk to a barista, I didn't talk to my guard bhaiya, like I didn't, right? The only say 20 minutes of my day, 40 minutes of my day would be when I went for a run in the morning. That compared to now, since when I moved to Bombay and I get to talk to Surveji outside Starbucks, or not, I mean, he's moved, but that part, or spend time with Anshika, or spend.
Or just like a Mumbai local where you're like, oh, will I get a fourth seat today?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, for me, it's rickshaws. Exactly that, right? I mean, that day, rickshaw wala was saying hi to his wife who was working somewhere else, and I got to like ask him about that, right? But exactly that interaction, matlab, just that part of my day, and I could not explain why I'm more engaged with life in general until you put this in words. So I think, yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that for sure. That is interesting. Because you said this right about confidence and where it like what understanding yourself. Now, this building confidence is one part of say working on myself, right? Um, how important is this whole idea? Say self confidence, and there may be more things like this that help me become a better individual. How important are these ideas? When getting into romantic relationships, and I'll set a little more context right there with this story. So I have always debated, and I don't have say a strong stand. I mean, I'm leaning towards one side, but I often get into this debate of a lot of people say that okay, you have to fully understand yourself to then get into a romantic relationship. Okay, I've always been on the side of see self love or say self growth is not an end state. I will never be at this peak and stay there. It is each time I move forward, there's a next step to be. So I have believed that. Now, one, where do you lie on that side? What do you have to say about that? And two, how important it is this whole idea of understanding yourself before you get into a whole relationship with somebody, and specifically a romantic relationship. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's my longish question plus context.
Yeah, it does. And I'm glad we're talking about it because, Chandni, one thing that I keep telling people is that you are the cake and anyone else can only be the icing. So at any point in time, operating from a place of scarcity or operating from a place of, oh, I think someone else will be able to complete me and only then will I feel good about it, is not the way to go. And therefore, It's so important to, of course, come from a growth mindset, come from an abundant mindset, know yourself well. But we are always evolving. We are always on the path where we are learning more about ourselves. So it's not to say that, you know, one particular day you're going to be enlightened and then you can enter from platonic to romantic, whatever that leap is. Uh, but it's so important to, and so I typically work with people who are marriage minded singles, and they have settled, they have addressed a lot of variables by that time. So they would have completed their education, they would have, figured which city, at least for the near future, would they like to live in, what kind of a career are they into, and they have sort of figured out a couple of variables and now have the bandwidth and the time and the resources to devote towards life partner search. And the reason I also choose to work with marriage minded singles is because I do understand that when people are still in, say, early 20s, they have so many variables to figure out. Do I want to do a master's? If yes, in India or outside? If in India, do I want to continue with the engineering stream? Do I want to switch towards the B school side? Do I want to stay closer to my hometown or in my hometown with my parents? Do I want to move out and spend a little, but also learn a different life and a different side of myself? Do I want to, I mean, multiple questions, right? So while all this is happening, yes, you can enter a romantic relationship. Uh, and in fact, while you're still evolving, while you're still in your younger years, you're way more flexible to accommodate someone else, and that person also is perhaps going to relax their filters and be less rigid about their filters and be more accommodating about you and your quirks. So there's no right or wrong to it. It helps when more of your variables are sort of settled. Having said that, it's a good idea to just be more aware and have somebody with you along that journey.
That answers my question for sure. Thank you. Yeah, that is helpful.
Radhika, now that we're talking about getting to know yourself better, I'm sure there's a journey there. How does one go from realizing that, hey, I need to know myself better, to actually executing? Like, what is the next step? How do you get to know yourself better, if I may ask?
Interesting. Uh, if I just have to give one word answer, I think Vipassana is a good answer. If you
Oh,
can
yeah.
handle the 10-day long meditation program, just focus on your breath for 10 days. No phones, no outside communication, no talking to people in your own batch, nothing. But since a lot of us can't handle that, I've been to Vipassana once. My husband has been there twice, and he does meditate
Right.
regularly.
Yeah,
So
some people in our circle also have been. I think I plan on doing it when I'm, I don't know, 25
Sometime,
maybe.
yes.
Yeah, for sure.
right. So, yeah, so if not that, then right now the answer would be to engage in a diverse set of experiences, allow yourself the exposure to gain from different experiences, from the company of different kind of people, and then understand what your core values are and what is it that you truly want to focus on. But I think that diversity in experiences is, it's important, and it really allows you to understand what brings out the best side of you.
Yeah, got it. I remember a few days back, I was talking to a friend about this idea of how you need to fuck around and find out. And what this just means is that you need to go out in the world and try everything that there is to try and figure out what works for you and what does not. What is your system? What do you like? What do you not like? For example, Chani, when she moved to Mumbai, we were talking about how she now knows that she likes her desk against the window, for example. Till you've not had that experience with yourself, you don't know. Till you've not hung out with, say, 10 groups of people, you don't know what is the kind that you want to spend the rest of your life looking for or hanging out with, spending your time. So yeah, that makes sense.
And I just have one point there. So
Yeah,
we don't always need to make mistakes in order to learn per
correct.
se. So when I'll keep using this word self-awareness, but when I talk about self-awareness, it's also because uh, it helps you break those patterns that aren't serving you anymore. It helps you understand that something which was part of your childhood trauma or which was part of, something that didn't go well with you doesn't have to be repeated all over again in order to then allow you to do better. So, and that's the reason the very first thing we talked about was attachment style. It's so important to understand your attachment style, your personality, your love language. Just gain more clarity on who you are as a person. Uh, that would prevent you from unnecessary heartbreak. I'm not saying it's a guarantee नहीं है कि उसके बाद heartbreak नहीं होगा. But at least आपको इतना पता होगा कि यार इसमें मेरा रोल क्या था.
Correct.
You know,
Yes.
what role did I play in it? What responsibility am I willing to take from whatever worked out or did not work out in that relationship?
I, my thought here is that that's true, right? So I mean, the idea is to that's I think that's what support systems are for, right? Like for example, I'll take like parents for example, right? The reason they are so particular about some lessons is because they're like, okay, we learned it the hard way. You don't have to exactly for that. Like, could you stand on the cushion we built after so much hard work and so many negative lessons? Like, why do you have to go make a new mistake and probably learn something? But why
कुछ
do
चीजें
the
हमें
same?
करके ही समझ आती है ना.
Exactly. तो वो balance क्या है? Like, मतलब I don't know what the balance is. Like, one should I like for example each time it's a very silly example. Okay, somebody told me I was going for a I was talking about Burj and being at the top of Burj is a touristy experience to somebody. And this has happened in multiple places. When I say, okay, I want to try pizza at that place, people are like, oh no, it's not good. I've tried it. And I'm like, no, I want to have that opinion for myself. Like, even if it's with somebody who I trust and who understands my context, I'm often like, okay, I want to be able to say it was a bad experience. So I don't know how that balance should I maybe one thing I can think of probably would be reversible and irreversible. Like we talk about this, Anshika, what's a irreversible door?
Correct.
Like what's a door that you enter and you can't come back? Like that won't open again, right? Maybe there you don't take chances. But the smaller things where you can take that round for yourself and come, and the only way for you to learn the lesson is to having tested it. I don't know what the balance is. Maybe you don't need to figure out the balance. I don't know. But that's a
Yeah,
thought.
I think I was gonna say that. I don't think you need a balance. I think you just
Yeah.
have to be and things happen and you make the best out of what happens. Like maybe that.
Can't tell.
Why does it all have to be so complicated?
Yeah.
Yeah, life isn't that complicated.
It is not. Yeah, I
We
think most
thought it.
people, for sure. Agreed. Yeah, awesome. Again, I wanted to Radhika, there was one part of like things we wanted to talk about, right? Another thing that we often like at least hunt for answers is when it comes to women and their relationship with their career and how, say, their ecosystem affects that, right? So, for example, one of the things that we want to understand is today, women in urban cities who are working like full-time jobs, what are do they what are some things they find difficult to manage when it comes to their relationships? It could be with their spouse, it could be with finding new people, it could be with their family, etc. But what are some challenges you may have noticed in your experience of having spoken to so many, say, marriage-minded singles, or even other people who found love, right? Like after that.
Right. I think interesting question. So, three highlights when it comes to single women who are in bigger cities in India and the kind of experiences that they are having. So, one, a lot of us are now spending our 20s in building our career, in carving our own identity outside आप किसकी बेटी हो, किसकी बीवी हो, किसकी बहू हो, and all of that. Uh, and writing our own stories and creating our own narrative. So a lot of our 20s is now going towards that, towards more of individual identity formation. And that, in a way, impacts our life choices of who are we choosing to partner with. Because if at all we have the flexibility to be able to choose our own partner, then somebody you'd choose in maybe your early 20s based on the data points that you have, which is largely what kind of rom-coms you liked at that point in time and what kind of content you consumed and what kind of people you found to be cool enough or hot enough or the prom date idea of who it should be. And then, by late 20s, you're like, hey, is he going to be vocal about gender equality? Is he going to help me in the kitchen when the house help is not coming during the pandemic? Is he going to, co-parent? Is he going to, like, you arrive at a lot of harder conversation topics, and so yeah, so that's one, the kind of the way we are spending our 20s and the kind of data points we are looking at, early 20s versus late 20s. Second is the fact that a lot of us in our 30s living in bigger cities have in a way figured out a lot of things that we like and absolutely do not like. And in a way, that contributes towards being more particular about my, you know, more particular about your choices, and could perhaps also contribute towards a bit of rigidity, if I may say so. So, obviously, two sides of the coin, right? So, if you have worked so hard in your 20s to build your career, then it also means that maybe in your 30s, you are you have frozen a lot of variables. So you're like, okay, I'm in IT. I need to be, if I'm in India, I need to be in Bangalore because that's where the IT scene is. That's where my career growth is. That's where I get the next jump and the next appraisal and the next opportunity and all of that. And then you've designed a life around it, from taking that apartment in Sarjapur to buying that car to ensuring you have the same house help who knows exactly what you need in your food to whatever. So, just building that support system for yourself in a city that may not have been yours, but is now something you have come to terms with, and now you have a life designed around you a certain way, and therefore you may not be willing to move. Therefore, you may not be willing to switch that easily, to give up on everything and just like pack your bags and move on. So that is something that I'm definitely seeing in a lot of conversations. Third is the fact that there's nothing like work-life balance. India में तो myth है. Like I remember being at your story tech sparks where Bhavish Agarwal of Ola clearly said that हमारी generation के नसीब में work-life balance लिखा नहीं है. And again, that affects your dating life. It affects your relationships. It affects the kind of choices you can make for yourself, because in the absence of that work-life balance, if you're not able to make friends with people outside your work, or if you're not able to, and your workplace does not have, a pro dating policy. So you're like, oh, workplace पे भी date नहीं कर सकते, उसके बाहर तो दोस्त है ही नहीं. So you're doomed everywhere. And then the fact that longer hours at work can also lead to more health issues for people. There are people who haven't been able to focus on their fitness. There are people experiencing body image issues. There are people who are not sure where to fit in, you know, their where to prioritize their relationships. And a lot of that is coming up time and again. So yeah, India as a country, we are the highest when it comes to burnout globally.
That you gave me like a lot of things to think about. One like thought that's just like screaming in my head is I was thinking about what's changing in dating today. And from what I hear from you, I think in the past, people could design their lives and the career aspect of their lives around relationships. And now, increasingly, so you design your life and your relationships and your emotional support systems around careers. And maybe that's a transition that we'll see more of in the future. And maybe, especially here, it's really important for workplaces to be a space where you want to go into because you want to make friends there, you want to find partners there, if at all, and like have good culture. Our parent company C4E, me and Chani, we've I think the reason we stay here and we are proud advocates of the culture at C4E, we built it, we fiercely protect it. And now I see a little more importance of why it matters that your workspace is warm, is some place you want to wake up and look forward to going to. Because in these isolated lives, finding these support systems for yourselves, it's really important. So yeah, that. Um, yeah,
I'm,
really interesting.
yeah, and I'm, what I often, AK, you said this thing, right, about like C4 in our culture. Radhika, we are like a 10 people team right now, an extended village of 30 plus, but 10 people who wake up every day and work with this group, right? See, we've been able to crack this in 10 people. And I think the goal right now is to figure out how do you continue that with like a larger group. So
Correct.
that's why what you said is important that, okay, for a large corporate setup, this may not be possible. Like they may not be able to create. And that's why those people have to, and that's why for them, it's even more important to build a life outside of their job, right? And it's very different in both these contexts. But if your workplace is not that warm is like baseline. And I think, and warm could be, I don't know, maybe warm as a general parlance may not make sense here, but baseline happy, like you should look forward to it as the baseline. Anything
Correct.
above that, if that doesn't exist, I think it is super important to be able to have that outside of your work hours. I
Also,
have a follow.
Jhanvi, if I may add there,
Yeah,
uh, work cannot be your only identity.
yeah,
Yeah,
Your,
for sure.
your life is a pizza, work is
yeah,
one of the slices.
yeah,
It's not the whole pizza.
yeah, for sure.
And when we link our entire identity to work all the time, and in a city that attracts the most ambitious people from across the nation, Bangalore, and work becomes your identity. Even in house parties, the first go to question is also what do you do?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
And that partyful link is shared with people based on their LinkedIn designations.
yeah, yeah,
And then it becomes troublesome because what happens if you're laid off tomorrow for whatever reasons?
yeah,
Your company
yeah,
may
for
not have
sure.
raised the next funding round. You may not have been able to lead well, whatever the reason is. What happens if, you know, because of a multitude of reasons, if you are not employed currently, or if you are not where you'd like to be work wise, then does that mean it's the end of your life?
Yeah, no, for sure. I One, I think I've seen two kinds of people. I remember I was at this dinner with some folks from like tech, and one of them was unemployed at the time, and then by choice, if I remember correctly. And I could That was one kind of person, right? That person was not attached to, say, the designation they held or the company they were with, but the skill that they possessed or the personality that they had, right? In the sense that this person outside of that job was also content, and they trusted their ability to do something and create something and not say the job they were with, right? That was one kind. Second is, say, these people are either attached to their I don't mean to the first name comes to mind is, say, an institution like IIT. It's like, you're attached to, say, that pedigree and that identity. I think those are two kinds of people I've seen, and I think it does help to at least that's how I see the difference, right? One is you attach yourself to, say, this institution, could be your company, could be your university, or you attach yourself to, say, you as a person, like where are you growing, right? And when that company is removed from the equation, you're not broken down. Like, that's not the case. Because what you build over time is more about your personality, your skill, your mind than any institution. And those are, I think, two kinds of people I've seen in different contexts, work, outside work, etc. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. Awesome. I had a follow up on what you said. This was a question also in the list, but AK, I remember this because you mentioned this thing, right? Of like, oh, whether this person will share household responsibilities with me during COVID when my household doesn't show up. Um, how do people today, maybe specifically women also, because the onus is on them right now, navigate through like shared responsibilities, right? Like, for example, how do you have that conversation with somebody? Is it super important to have that as a not criteria? I don't mean to make this like scientific. I don't mean it that way. But like, should this be super important before you get into like something super long term, right? Because I know it is important, right? But how do you navigate through that? Does it come after you've decided to spend your life together? Is it something you have to look for before? How do you navigate that?
Interesting. So, what I'm hearing in a very dating terminology is how do you look for those green flags and how do you figure out if you're compatible on that front? And how do
Yeah.
you know if that is a deal breaker or not?
Yeah.
So it's like in my head, I'm using a Google Translate to to convert, to translate all
Yeah,
into
it's
dating
very accurate.
terminology.
I must tell you that. You got
Yes.
it spot on.
Um, two things to really look at here, Chandni. One is the fact that again, when you understand yourself well, you know that you know what your value system is, you know what your lifestyle is, you know what your goals are. And you also know what are your absolute non-starters. Like, what are some things which are non-negotiable, which are deal breakers for you? And you have a conversation about those deal breakers in the first 2 to 3 dates itself. So your deal breaker is not something that can come up later. Like, hey, after we get rocafied, then we can discuss deal breakers. Hell no.
Yeah.
Because and whatever those 2 to 3 deal breakers are, right? Like I've seen women tell me that I mean, I coach men and women both. So since we are talking about women here, I've had women tell me that their deal breakers include, their food habits. Because somebody who's a Jain and a strict vegetarian would not want to, for whatever reason, even include eggs in their diet, or their deal breakers include the geography because they are a single child to their parents and they would want to continue living in the same country as their parents. So they're still one domestic flight away and be able to look after their elderly or, to be able to continue working after marriage and not give up just because the family is rich and you can afford to sit at home or whatever. So I think it's important to have those hard conversations about your deal breakers absolutely early on. And that allows you to know if there are green flags or red flags or beach flags or whatever those flags
Yeah.
are. Because if the person says, oh no, like this is not acceptable to me, like, sure, okay. And even if they say yes, you don't have to believe them on their face. You also have to then look through how is how are they showing up in real life? How are they treating you? Do they actually mean what they're showing? And through their actions, it will show.
Yeah.
It's one thing for me to say, oh, yes, I'm always on time. And then what if I logged in half an hour late to this call? You'll not believe me, I'm always on time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, Anshika, side note for us, right? One of the things I strongly feel about is that um, our generation and like generally, we have not been raised, at least what I speak with my sample space, right? Like sample size space. We have not been taught to have honest conversations. And what you said right in the beginning of the conversation when it came to situationship, right? We don't do difficult conversations in general. Like I think I was never taught how to, like, it's taken me as an individual so many years to point out something that's uncomfortable. And this is not the default case, right? Like at least I would like the default case to be that you can sit down with somebody you trust and tell them what made you uncomfortable and believe the only outcome to be that it'll be solved, right? It'll be a win-win for two people. But it's not like that. Like at least in my worldview, it has not been like that, right? But I think of what we would like to talk to you at some point is that if Anshika and I are talking about building confidence in young women, can one part of that also be to have this clarity for ourselves, have the confidence to have these conversations, like how do I not feel guilty about wanting to be near my parents? How do I not feel guilty about saying in a conversation that, okay, I would like to continue working and not be drawn back by these expectations? But I think that's just like a brain fart of something that I strongly feel about and would like to see happen. It's not the default right now. It's case by case, right? It's case by case. It depends on the kind of family you grow up in. It depends on the kind of friends you grow up around. It depends on whether you grew up in a good friends circle or not, right? Like, where does all of this? But could we make it? Yeah, but
Absolutely. In fact,
yeah,
now is a good time for me to honestly plug Sisters in Stories. It's a community of single women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s woven with stories. And we have women who are leading these chapters in multiple cities across India at this point in time. And we are more than happy to eventually take it global. The whole intent is for women to come together on the first Sunday of every month for a 90-minute free journaling session. And I design all the prompts so that everybody has a shared context to the kind of conversations that they'll be having as part of the journaling session. And those have ranged from, Women's Day conversations going around who are the women who inspire you, in what ways, and how do you show your appreciation towards them? All the way to our most recent one on the lines of when was the last time you felt heard and seen in a conversation? And what are the kind of changes that have happened in your life in the last 1 year, and how has that contributed to growth? So we are having a lot of conversations around growth, around what brings you joy, around relationships, a good relationship with yourself, your interpersonal relationships, the one that you are looking forward to from a lifetime perspective, all of that. So definitely enabling that safe space to be able to have those conversations with people who are also on a similar journey so that they understand in an absolute non-judgmental way.
yeah. We'd love to attend like a Bombay edition, or if you said these are
Most
hosted
one,
by women
most
themselves,
one.
then
I would totally love more and more women to host in their cities.
oh, done. Oh, yeah, like you said, it's hosted by these women. Okay, we must for sure. Like,
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, just last night actually, while researching on you, I went to the website and I was looking for something in Mumbai and I couldn't find something. And yeah, maybe we'll do one.
Yeah,
done.
totally. So, on the website, since radhikamohta.com is something which is uh, Elevate is the primary offering. So there's an asynchronous video course that people can take up at any point in time, come to the Monday office hours, and they can make progress. If at all they do have time, then they can sign up for the live cohort, which happens on the first Saturday of the month. And that enables them with more clarity, with optimizing their profile and just ensuring they're on the right path. So the website definitely talks about Elevate. All my social handles, from Instagram to Twitter to LinkedIn, all of those would talk about a ton of other stuff that I'm doing. I think the best way to keep you in the loop about everything would be to just sign up for the free newsletter
Yes,
on the
I did that.
website. Absolutely. The open rates are pretty insane. So it really helps to just.
Yeah, I think
get for the-
2 years ago, when I had DM'd you about a session, Saurabh had shared one of the newsletters with me. I remember that. So since then, obviously, we've been seeing your work a year or 2 years ago. I can't, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Wow. We've been in each other's radar since then.
Yes.
yes.
That's also why we sort of jumped when we realized, oh, Radhika messaged us. She wants to do a podcast with us.
Oh my God. I feel
Exactly.
like celebrity suddenly.
Yeah, no, we so I'll tell you exactly. Actually, we can take like a tiny second because I don't delete chats. So I remember when we were super small, like DD had just started. Okay, we must be like 100 followers on Instagram. This is 2022 December.
Oh, yeah, I do
Um,
recall. I recall.
yeah,
Yes.
we were just trying to like look for people to do like live sessions on our Instagram. And at that time, obviously, we parked it for a later time. And now, when Anshika put a message out, we got connected again. So it was a nice full circle moment, to be honest. And so that, I mean, at some point, if our lives are overlapping, it's always a great
Good sign. Yeah.
chat.
Definitely.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yes.
Radhika, now that we were talking about dating, something that comes to mind is when you're dating somebody, you're with them and you evolve together and you also copy things from each other, become similar people, all of those that happen. But what also happens in a relationship is sometimes people might feel that they're losing themselves. They are drifting away from who they are. And that's a difficult place to be, largely because you've spent some amount of time with this person, there's emotional attachments, all those chords, you don't want to break up, you don't know what will happen when you break up, all of those things. But what advice would you give somebody who is stuck in that space where they feel like they're losing their independence in the relationship? How do you have a conversation like that? And what do you tell yourself? How do you get out of it? Do you get out of it? All of those things.
I love that question. So, as couples therapist Esther Perel would say, there's nothing like one significant other. So, beginning of your question, when you said you become like each other, that happens when 200% of your time is for each other. That's it. Nobody else enters our space. We don't do our individual interest and don't pursue our individual hobbies and don't have our, individual things to do. Nothing. Like we become like conjoined twins and we are always together. And that's suffocating. It's toxic. So it's so important to have. It's great you have a romantic partner, but can you please continue to have a life of your own? Can you please continue to pursue your hobbies, your interests? Say yes, RSVP yes to those girlfriends who are hosting a house party. Go ahead with your trips and do fun stuff. Also, build a life together with your person. So that is one. And then the other thing is, at any point in time, if you're seeing that you're doing everything that is in your hands, but it's the other person who's trying to control you, trying to, be that narcissist who's trying to make you codependent on them, or just like being super possessive and checking on you on everything and everything. Then that's when you sign up with a couples counselor and seek couples therapy and discuss those issues very clearly, because that power struggle is not healthy.
Yeah, then that makes sense. I also read this newsletter that my Ashish writes. It's called Women in India. And one of our recent issues talked about how married women specifically lose all their girlfriends because they say marry a man. And I'm talking heterosexual relationships here. They marry a man and they move to their house, their city, all of those things. And slowly they drift away from their old girlfriends. And they also do find friends in their partner's friends. But are they really your friends? When people do divorce in these situations, if at all, you lose those friends. You don't have anybody because you've drifted away from your older ones. And the new ones were not yours to begin with. And you didn't make a new set of like your people. And that loneliness is probably heartbreaking. I cannot imagine. I'm far from it for it to ever happen, but it's it just might be a terrible space to be stuck in something like that.
I hear you. And I think that's the reason, the kind of stories I'm seeing come out of Sisters in Stories, they're just so amazing. I mean, women are coming together at a point in time when they're going through the same life situations and phase of life, and they are on they are almost on the same boat. And even though they may have met just an hour ago, they're discussing everything about their lives, and towards the end of the session, even referring a date to each other. Because they're like, oh, you don't have to go to the apps. I have that one cousin and that one coworker I'm never gonna date any which way. So why don't you go ahead? Things like those. And it's, how do I say it? It's one thing to have your blood relations and your family. It's another thing to be able to have your found family. And I've been using this hashtag found family for like more than 5 years now on a lot of postcards that I draw and write. And I absolutely love that word because you need to create that found family. With the kind of migration patterns that we have now, with how many cities I may have moved because of my education, work, um, boyfriend who's now husband and all of that, or the number of neighborhoods we would have shifted because sometimes office is closer to where I would like to be, and it's now closer to where he has to show up every day and all of that. We are not as anchored into the same pin code as, say, our grandparents or parents were. So that migration has become a part of our lives. And if that's the choice that we have made for ourselves, then it's also important to choose your found family and to commit to those quarterly, half yearly, yearly trips together, those monthly video calls, those game nights, those catch ups when you're in the same city, even if it's just half an hour near the airport, all of that. What I'm trying to arrive at, AK, is that in an age of hyper connectedness, in an age of 2,000 people on your Facebook and 5,000 on your Instagram and whatever those numbers are, it's easy to feel that artificial intimacy, as Esther Perel would call it. But if you're not in town, who's going to feed your cat? And it's so important to be intentional. It's important to be intentional about your actions at every goddamn stage. If you are using dating apps, I don't expect more than 20 minutes a day usage. And that too when you're feeling your best self. If you are showing up in the outside world, I expect you to dress up authentically, to show up wearing a color that you would like that day that conveys your mood, wearing, a lipstick you like, or carrying that handbag you like, or that tote bag which conveys about the latest protest you attended, or, just let the world know your personality. You don't have to pick up yet another t-shirt from your wardrobe just because किसी startup ने free में दे दिया था and वो black color का था and खोचू लग रहे हो तुम उसमें. Like, don't do that. It's so important to be intentional about our screen time, about if you are in public, why are you on screens? And if you're not in public, do you want to do a doomsday scrolling? for no reason, because that's when we start comparing our lives to the lives of others who are going to Maldives or Lakshadweep or whatever the next thing is for their vacations, and to people who are throwing birthday parties on yachts, and you're looking at their pictures. Nobody's telling you what mess they've been through. Nobody's telling you they took a loan to do that party on the yacht. So
Correct. Yeah.
I think being intentional is the key, being mindful is the key to a lot of things right now. Otherwise, we'll just go with the flow and then forget where we were going.
So much of it, and I'll probably write about this and put it out in the world because
Exactly what I was
public.
thinking. I have made so many notes of
My
so
God.
many thoughts.
It's no, not sorry. I think Radhika said something.
No,
No,
yeah.
I'm just
love
looking at somebody made notes.
I love
Yeah.
making. There's always things that spark, say, 10,000 different tabs in my head. So if I want to shut them and be present, I need to write so that I can go back to them later.
Yeah,
But
exactly. I made a note of a question from something you said 20 minutes ago, and while it's gone, I will still probably come back to it at some point. But no, what I was saying is, I think an insight I would draw from all of this is that we each time we talk about relationships, so much of it comes down to an individual self, intentionality, and awareness. But if I were to draw keywords from this that stick in my, that got stuck in my head, or that are sticking in my head right now, and that I would remember, say, 5 days later, would be these. And it's just interesting. Like, I think there is no insight there. It's just interesting in my head that relationships are probably a result of all of these things. Good relationships are probably a result of all of these things. And um yeah, I think that's important to note, for me at least, for sure. Um AK, if I can yeah,
It
sorry.
starts with the relationship that we have with ourselves.
Yeah.
It stems from there. I mean,
Yeah.
no matter how your day is going, no matter how stressful situations are, what life is throwing at you, response देना तो आपके हाथ में है ना.
Yeah.
And if that response is always going to be reactionary, hey, तूने मेरे को थप्पड़ मारा, मैंने तेरे को बदले में 2 थप्पड़ मार दिया, और फिर दोनों जेल चले गए.
Yeah.
yeah.
Versus you're like, okay, I think this person is having a bad day, but I am mindful. I
Yeah.
know what I do and what I don't do. I know my moral compass, or I know how I operate, and I don't want to slap this person back. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, it will lead to a very nice Twitter drama that will unfold for all those anxious people hanging out.
Yeah, correct. I think Twitter lives on its own like tangent altogether. Like people on Twitter. Uh, AK, in the keeping time in mind,
Yeah.
were there some things that you definitely wanted to
Yes,
not
actually, I
skip?
was just thinking about that. We'll try to wrap this up quickly. We've taken a lot of your time. It was a very interesting conversation. Couldn't stop.
Yeah, I know. We'll need
Um,
one more 6 months later, or like 2 months
yes,
later if we can demand that.
sure.
But yeah.
Yes. What I want to ask is, so relationships are changing. We talked about that. Marriages are changing. The world has changed. In this new world order, and this is me, the marketer, asking, what should a brand remember when they're trying to talk to a woman about their relationships? And this could be a Bumble or a Tinder and a Hinge and all those things, but also like an Ariel, which recently did this ad about how you need to share the load and these tiny things that really matter, right? What else do brands remember when they're trying to talk to this cohort?
Interesting. I think a lot of brands already have it in their communication. But broadly, if I have to boil it down to 3 things, one is definitely make your move. If you're waiting to be chosen, you will be chosen by that last person who is left. So you can make your own move, you can call your own shots. You've come this far, done so well for yourself. in the name of somebody else should be chivalrous and somebody else should make the move because you are a woman, do not wait. It's okay to make the first move. And nobody in the long term is anyway going to remember that you were the one making the first move. So it's okay. Second is to continue to have your own identity. And that identity does not always have to be just work. It's okay if you are taking a sabbatical. It's okay if you're on a maternity break. It's okay if you want to take care of the elderly and not work right now. It's okay, whatever you're doing. But can you continue to have your own identity? And no, that identity does not mean what's your package today.
Yeah.
And third is, I think a lot of times brands tell us that, we care and we are celebrating one Women's Day in the entire year
Yeah.
for 50% of this planet. But it's so important for us to show up for our girlfriends every single day. And all it takes is a little bit of thought and a little bit of intention. When was the last time you gave a shout out to your girlfriend's small business or startup or venture on social media? When was the last time you floated that message about her success in your group chats saying that, hey, that's my girlfriend right there? When was the last time you sat in the audience in the front row while she was a speaker at an event? When was the last time you nominated her to be a speaker on that panel in that event? When was the last time you just let her know that, hey, I'm there, and make it specific about, I'm there if you need a pickup or drop because I know you're going to be late that day. Like when you're offering help, can you just be a little specific about what can they reach out to you for? And I think just those little things allow that conversation window to remain open. I was recently talking to somebody who is in her late 20s, lives in HSR in Bangalore. And I remember her telling me that, after breaking up with her boyfriend, suddenly her entire friend circle vanished because the one that she had prior to that relationship was something she couldn't continue because of time constraints, or I will just call it lack of intention. And the one that she had after that was the one that was her boyfriend's circle. And now suddenly she experienced a heartbreak. She didn't have anyone to reach out to. She was in a city that's not hers. And living in that one BHK with a high disposable income and working whatever number of hours per week, she didn't have time to make friends afresh. But my point is, you are in your late 20s. You have already had so many opportunities to make friends and you have them. And what's stopping you from being intentional and just continuing with those while you also add new ones to your roster?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That thing that you said about be specific about the help you're offering. The last time I read something like this that blew my mind, absolutely, was on this Instagram page actually called The Antidote. And this was at least 4 years ago. I remember it was during a friendship where this piece of advice helped, and that friendship is not there anymore. But it was this thing where when somebody is venting, before you say anything at all, you ask them whether they want to be heard or they want advice. And to my 16, 17-year-old brain at that time, it was brilliant. I think it has added so much to my life today. It's not funny, right? And I think what you said now, I never thought about that. I am remembering each time I've told somebody I'm here for you and realize that it's so out of context that they don't know what to do with that. Like even with Archik, I know exactly what to do. And I think uh, just like, thank you so much for mentioning that. I don't think I've come across that piece of advice before.
Because it's also like Shani, difficult if somebody comes and tells me, "Hey, I'm here for you," but you're here for me. How? When can I reach to you? I don't know. And it's just so
And
vague. And
there are so
no,
many
Anshika,
life
the funny thing,
transitions. There are so many life transitions which are so hard, so challenging, so difficult to navigate. Like I remember when we were moving from HSR to Indiranagar, like same
yeah,
city but different neighborhoods about 5 months ago. And
yeah,
this one person who was in Elevate last year June, she was very specific. She said, Radhika, your first coffee in Indiranagar after you move here is on me. And then she checked in on me after I moved here and she said, your
yeah,
first coffee is due. And then I
yeah,
met her for 30 minutes and I felt so much at home.
yeah, yeah.
And
The funny thing, sorry.
I remember being that person back in HSR where we lived for 5.5 years. I continue to run my neighborhood community. HSR is home
Yeah,
there. We have more than 1,200 people on our Discord server. And I would
yeah,
very clearly tell people that, your first plant is on me. I'm going to give away
yeah, yeah,
I propagate my money plants, so I'm going to give you one. Or your first
yeah,
coffee is on me. Or your first pani puri at Shubh Sweets is on me. Or your
yeah,
first, you have to show up at the book club and it's on me. And that would really allow people to remember, hey, once I move to HSR, I'm supposed to get in touch because, she owes me
yeah,
this.
yes,
yeah,
I love. I'm totally going to steal this idea. I'm gonna tell people,
Totally, do
"Your
it.
your plans are on
yeah,
me." Amazing.
Steal like an artist. That's how Austin
exactly.
would put it.
Exactly. Yes.
The
So
funny thing
true.
is, I've been in that place to ask these questions of like, okay, feel like I don't know what help to ask for, but didn't realize that I was doing the same to other people. So guilty as charged, like for sure. But changes now. Iggy, you'll start with your like rewards, right? Like you're getting coffee to some for some people soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Radhika, if there is the last question, what we're doing is all the women we're speaking to this month, we're asking them this question quite deliberately. I will not give you a lot of context, which is that what do you as a woman of today want? And it can, I pause there. Actually, each time I tell
Yeah.
people, I'll
That's
not set
it,
context
Shani.
and
I'll
then I
wait for
give
you.
context.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
What do
but
you
yeah, that's
want?
the question. That's it. I step back.
So, what do I, as a woman of today, want?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think I want to continue having the support system that I have. I want to continue being grateful for all the men and women who have been my cheerleaders, been my best critics, been in my inner circle, and I'll just continue to grow with them.
it's Anshika, is it the time to
What's
reveal
fun?
that you're the second person on like in 3 days to answer the same thing, like with zero
Correct.
context? Like it's
Maybe
if
that's
we
what
had
women really want, and nobody has gotten it. Like, I don't know.
yeah, we're gonna ask more people, Anshika, and we'll get to the
It's
bottom of this.
uncanny because you also used very similar
Same
language.
words. Yeah. Um wow. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I did
let's
not
ask.
expect that. Yeah.
I think it comes from a place where when you're already grateful for a lot of things that you have, it's and when you have a sense of agency in your life, then you don't necessarily want something out of the blue. Like, I wouldn't want to become a billionaire if I haven't worked towards it. Or I
Yeah.
would want to suddenly land on Mars if I haven't worked towards it, or something out of the blue would not be on my bucket list. If it is on my bucket list, I'm already working towards it. So I wouldn't want it just like that.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It's my birthday next month, and somebody asked me, a very dear friend asked me, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I just said, "I just want like my people. I just want to be loved, and that's all I want and care for." And I said that too. Oh God. Okay, my mind is blown because I said that
Yeah,
to
that's what.
yeah.
Wow. It's so funny and uncanny, funny in a good way. But yeah, I think if we're able to solve for that, we'll all win. So yeah. Radhika, this was AK, we'll debate later if you want to do like mornings or nights. But this is so lovely.
Yeah, we have
AK
to
Radhika,
do
if you have anything to add, please do. Because I was moving to my last sentence. But
this.
AK, was there
Uh,
anything from your side?
that's
No?
it from me. Radhika, any thoughts, any last word?
Yeah.
Thank you for hosting me here, and I'll be happy to have people look me up at radhikamohta.com and happy to help them with their relationship goals.
Thank you so much.